I am Sayward B. Eller, writer for women, podcaster, author tuber, and I am super excited to have you back on my channel. Happy Monday! I used to hate Mondays because I had this horrible, it wasn't a horrible job, it was just horribly taxing. It was very exhausting mentally and emotionally. So I hated Mondays. Like, I never wanted to get up and go to work. But now I am trying to live my dream, and I don't mind getting up every single day of the week and doing what I love. So, crutch word, I'm going to do my very best today to not say so often. Today, I am switching gears a little bit. I'll be talking about, I'll be uploading a video later this week where I continue the discussion on building characters, because last week the character that I was talking about is in my most recently completed work in progress, but I am beginning my MFA novel because I'll be finished with my MFA in 2021. So that's going to be here before we know it. I mean, how quickly has 2019 gotten away from us, right? So, I am beginning work on that. So I need to develop that character, and I thought I would share that process with you later in the week. Just keep an eye out for that video. And if you haven't subscribed already, I do have 8 subscribers. I'm really excited about it. I don't know if they're watching or if it's just kind of a, really nice follow back thing, because whenever someone subscribes to me, I go subscribe to them. And that's just kind of the writer's way, I think. I think that we should be supporting one another. We should be lifting one another up, not to sound too much like a Twitter cliche. Not that I don't love Twitter, because I absolutely do. But I think that we should definitely lift one another up. So whenever a writer follows me, either, whether it's on Twitter or Instagram or AuthorTube, YouTube, whatever, I do follow them back. So I have been, gosh, every single time. Maybe that's just like my word. It's not a crutch word. It's just my word. Kind of like or, totally, if you're from my generation. Okay. But anyway, if you subscribe to me and you're a writer, I'm definitely going to subscribe back. I just think that we have to do our part as a writing community. We need to lift one another up, and there are plenty of people out there, so I don't think that we should look at one another as competition. We're just kind of people doing the same thing together. So, God, there it is again. Oh my goodness. Let's get started with today's conversation. I grumble about this to writing friends and my husband. Poor guy. He has to listen to me vent about so many things. Those of you who are married know exactly what I'm talking about, and your husbands know exactly what I'm talking about, or your wives, whatever. I have a pet peeve, I guess, or it's not even a pet peeve, it's like a massive peeve. I am the president of a small local writing group, and what we do is we're kind of specifically for the beginning writer. I think that you need to have a good base to start from, and the writing group that I lead, our goal is to give you that base. So you start with us, and then you might leave us in a few years, and well, it may not take you may leave us once you get on that journey. Once you get further along in your journey, you may leave the group that I'm in or the group that I lead and go off to another group that better suits your needs, because we're always growing, we're always evolving. Or you stay in the group and you help build other new writers up. But the term that I cannot deal with is aspiring writer or aspiring author. And I see this everywhere. I think that I'm not alone when I say we should really strike aspiring writer from our vocabularies, especially if we're actively writing. When you aspire to do something, to me at least, that means that you want to do it, you would like to do it, but you haven't started doing it yet. If you are writing, you are no longer aspiring to be a writer. You are actively doing this thing. You are writing stories, writing poetry, write whatever you're writing. You are a writer. You're no longer aspiring. You are a writer. And what really just gets under my skin is when I see big companies or big rollers in the publishing community using the term aspiring, because they should know better than me that aspiring does not apply to someone who is actively writing. If you haven't guessed yet, this is my grumble session. I saw it earlier today, and it just, every single time, I am sure I referred to myself as an aspiring writer at some point in my time as a writer. That was baby writer me. That was before I developed my sense of self-confidence as a writer me. Now, as I'm looking back, I wish that someone had said, hey, you're not aspiring, you're doing it. You may aspire to be traditionally published, which I do, but you are a writer. If you are writing stories and you are putting pen to paper in a creative way, as a writer, you are a writer. You are not aspiring, so stop saying it. That's what I would tell myself. And so that is what I am telling anyone watching now who says they are an aspiring writer. If you are writing, you are not aspiring. That means that you want to write, but you haven't started yet. You haven't decided yet. This is my definition. You guys look it up. If it's a different definition, let me know, and I'll be like, okay, sorry, but these are my feelings. These are my feelings that I'm putting out to you right now. Stop calling yourself an aspiring writer, an aspiring novelist, an aspiring author. You are not aspiring. You are writing. You are a writer. You're writing the stuff, so stop it. And just say, I'm a writer. I'm a writer, y'all. I am a writer for women. Okay, so, oh God, there it is again. I think I was doing really well and wasn't saying it, and then boom, there it is. It's like my segue word, my transition word. So, stop it. Let's move on. I have said my piece about aspiring, using the word aspiring. I'm also going to say my piece about it on my podcast this week, because I am doing the podcast is kind of supplemental, because some people like to watch videos, some people like to listen to podcasts. I like to do both. And I just want to talk to as many people as possible. I want to get out there and meet people and mingle, because I'm an introvert and I stay at home all the time. This is the only way that I'm communicating with people is online, and this is comfortable for me. Talk to me. The next thing I want to grumble about is this idea, and I see it a lot, especially in the indie community. I see it a lot with write faster, faster, faster. And it really, I'm one of those, I write about a novel a year, or, I write several short stories in a year. But compared to other writers, I write really slow, and I'm cool with that. I mean, I'm not like Charles Fraser slow. It takes him years to write a book, but man, does he research. He is an amazing writer. So I'm not taking anything away from him. But it is really, really prevalent, especially in the indie community, that you write, that you publish. And I have talked about this with quite a few writers that I know. And honestly, it often comes around to this in conversation that we end up talking about this need, especially among the indie writers in our community, to publish, to write faster, faster, faster. And today I was on YouTube, this morning I was on YouTube, kind of just going through, and I saw a video, how to write faster. And it just, here's how you write. You sit down in your chair. You open your computer, or you get out your notebook, or you sit in front of your electric typewriter. However you do it, you sit down and you start typing or scribbling or whatever. That is how you write. How do you write faster? You sit down consistently every single day and you write. And then before you know it, you're going to be finished with a novel or a short story or flash fiction or whatever. I mean, flash fiction, what does it take? Maybe an hour to write it, and then you go back and you fix it, and then you critique, you send it off to your critique people and they fix it, and then boom, you're done. So, segue word, it's just my transition word. Maybe I shouldn't hate myself for saying it so much. This particular part of the discussion made me get out my copy of, you guessed it, On Writing. This is one of the few craft books I've finished because, like I said last time, I'm not really a self-help kind of writer. I think that it detracts from what I'm doing. And if I'm going to read something, usually I'm reading fiction. I don't read a lot of craft stuff. But in this book, Stephen King's On Writing, which is really, really good. It's part, I'm sure many of you have read it, but it's part autobiography and craft. And he tells it in a way that you really don't realize you're reading a craft book. You're just kind of reading a book. He's just talking to you. So I think that's the reason why I was able to finish this particular craft book, is because it didn't feel like a craft book. It felt more like a conversation, a one-sided conversation, but a conversation nonetheless. In here, Stephen King talks about how he used to write books really fast. And as he's gotten older, as he says that he feels like not smoking anymore. It attributes to his slowing down. But he says, I believe the first draft of a book, even a long one, should take no more than 3 months, the length of a season. So that's the first draft. And I'm wondering if a lot of people have misconstrued that thought of writing that first draft as, and some indie books really reflect this, write the first draft, publish it because you're done. And that's another one of my big gripes. It's not a little gripe, it's a really big gripe. But I won't go into it in this video because we're talking about how fast it takes to write a book. Your first draft. Now, Stephen King says he writes a first draft, he puts it away for 6 or 7 weeks, then he comes back and he goes through it himself, then he sends it, then he gets other opinions. Now, if you go by that, maybe it takes him, 6 weeks is about a month and a half, so you've got 4.5 months there. Then he goes back through it, maybe that takes him a week or two, then he sends it off, maybe that's another week or two. Now that is going into 5-6 months that it takes him to get the book completely finished before he probably just sends it right into his editor. I don't know. I don't know his deal because we're not friends, as you can imagine. But when I see writers selling these ideas that they're writing a book in 6 weeks and they're publishing in 10 weeks. Like from the beginning of the story, from when they start writing, 10 weeks later they're publishing. I think that that's why we have such a bad rep in the publishing community, is because we do, not all of us, because there are some indie authors that are just, and I can name a few just off the top of my head, but they are super duper serious and super duper professional about the publishing thing, because this is their work and they're putting their best foot forward. But there are a lot of indie authors who are not putting their best foot forward. And I wonder if it's because of this constant barrage of write faster. Let me help you write faster. Let's get your book done let's get your book done in 2 weeks. Let's get it published in 4. I'm exaggerating, obviously. But I wonder if this, aside from the fact that I know, like, I'm very impatient. I published my first novel. I didn't have the money for an editor, so it is not edited by a professional editor, and I am super embarrassed by it. This is my first novel. It's 103,000 words. It probably should be 80,000 words. I think that's how many words I could have cut from it if I had gone with a professional editor. I head hop in here, I passive voice in here, I over describe in here. This book, I will look back on this book and I will say, I already do. This is where I started. And I have 2 books that I'm putting out next year. I've already spoken with the person that is going to edit those books for me. We already have our plan going for this. I am going to be so proud of those books, and I'm going to be able to put them up against this and say, okay, this is me. This is baby writer me. These are professional writer me. And as many times as I have really considered taking this book down, retiring it, I leave it up for some ungodly reason. I mean, what if people start buying it and they start reading it and they're like, oh my God, she's telling people about the writing process. That is something that I really worry about and I struggle with. I worked on this for a really, really long time. It took me, I had 7 drafts, and when I finally published it, I was so excited. And I still haven't read all the way back through it since I published it, because every time I open it and I read like a little passage, I'm just like, oh God, put it away. Just stop. Don't, just make it stop. But I won't take it down. Don't ask me why. It's like this whole brain thing with me. But again, if I had waited, another year or so when I could afford a professional editor a little bit better, then what I would have put out would have been something that I could look back now and be fully proud of. I'm proud that I put a book out there. I'm proud that I whittled it down from I think I had 120,000 words, and I whittled it down to 103. And it could still be whittled down more. I'm positive of it. I'm proud that I have these words and that I put this story out there. And I'm still proud of the story itself, but the execution is what I'm not exactly thrilled with. And I started to have this conversation on Twitter with an author yesterday who is doing exactly what I refuse to do. She is, and this is not uncommon, many of you probably know, she is revising her book and she's going to publish a revision of the book. To me, whenever a book is published, when these books were published, the publisher is not redoing them. Once they're published, that's it. They're done. They're published. And, there might be like a super popular book like The Handmaid's Tale is released, 20 years later, and it might have some updating or whatever. But once a story is done and it's published by a traditional publisher, it's published. And that's how I approach my writing. And I know I've gone off topic here, and I think that's okay because it's my video and I can do what I want, right? Don't call yourself aspiring, and don't force yourself to write too fast. It's okay if you only write 2 books a year. It's okay if you only write 1 book a year. That's okay. You do you. Now back to my rambling about. And now I've forgotten where I was even at with this. Just like that. I am proud of the story. I love the story. I love the characters. I was talking about my conversation with the Twitter person. So she's putting her books, she's revising her books and putting them out. Well, she's updating them. And to me, that is a disservice to people who have already purchased a copy, like a print copy. A lot of times I don't purchase ebooks. I purchase print copies because I prefer to hold a book in my hand than to read an ebook. Now, that being said, I have plenty of books on my Kindle to read, but I do prefer to hold a paper copy. And those people who purchased the first revision of your, the first version of your book, or the second, or the third, or the fourth, I think that you have done them a disservice if you're one of those writers who constantly updates your work after you've published it. You've published that book. It was good enough for you to hit publish, and you published it. You chose to put it out there in the world. Now it's time to let it go. Maybe it's because I'm a mother of grown children that I can say this. You raised this baby. You formed this baby. You've done all that you can do with this baby once you hit publish. Now it's out in the world, and you have to trust your baby. Maybe that's why I can do that, because I've always been of the mind, first of all, that once something is published, it's published. That's the best version that the publisher thought that there would be. And maybe that's why I don't take my book down, because, it's published. That's just the way it is. I have to deal with, any negative reviews that I get. I'll cry. Okay. I do that anyway. I do that quite a lot anyway. But I guess I ended up doing 3 gripes on here today, because I just really hate, it really bothers me when people don't put their best work forward. And that's why I admire a lot of the people that I follow here on AuthorTube who are putting their work out. The ones who aren't ready yet, they haven't published anything yet, because they know that their work is not ready. The ones who have published, especially the indie authors, they're hiring cover artists, they're hiring editors, they are making sure that they're putting out the best product possible. And I wish every indie author would do that, quite honestly. And also, I really wish that publishers would not just let a name be enough to publish a book, because I've read a couple of books in the last year by big time authors, and I was like, WTF. How did this get past their editor? Are they even reading them anymore? So I guess it's a double-sided thing. You have it in traditional publishing, but it's not as prevalent, the publishing of things that really shouldn't be published yet. But I don't know. I think it's so important in the indie community, because we haven't been fully accepted by the traditional publishing community, because we're still that, unwanted, it feels like. We're still that unwanted stepchild. I probably shouldn't say that. That's probably not PC now. It was when I was, it was in the 90s. Anyway, we are that unwanted, or it feels like indie authors are not exactly welcome everywhere. It's getting better, and it's way better than it was when I first published this, because now at least agents and publishers will still take you into consideration if you've published. When I published this, and even when I published my second collection of short stories, Jar of Hearts, it wasn't like that. If you self-publish, you're just self-published, and don't tell publishers and agents that you've self-published, because they're not going to care unless you have thousands and thousands of copies sold. I think it's still kind of like that, but I also feel like the tide is changing, and indie books are more accepted by publishers and agents. I have managed somehow to ramble for over 20 minutes, and I didn't mean to. I was trying to keep these around 15, 16 minutes. I apologize for going over, and also for kind of going off the rails with my original intended topic. But I really have nothing. I'll see you later in the week when I do get back on track and talk about building characters some more using Jeff Gerke. I really think it's Jeff Gerke, using his method of building a character. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble for 20-some minutes. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I hope that you will join me later in the week for more talks on building character. Have a great day. Bye!